Welcome to My Favorite CX, a podcast that celebrates exceptional customer experiences. To listen to today's, please choose from one of the following options.
Welcome to My Favorite Customer Experience, the podcast that highlights positive experiences in and around the world of customer experience. I'm Chris Holt from Holt CX Consultancy here in the UK, and I'm joined today by Kathryn Simons-Porter from Flourish Consulting. Kathryn, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me, Chris.
Now, Kathryn, we're going to peel the onion away slightly here. This is not actually your first appearance on My Favorite CX. We actually have an episode from about a year ago, which we canned because of some things we'll talk about in terms of your career and an acquisition that took place. But you're an active member of Women in CX. You've previously spent time at Core AI, Pega, NICE, Cisco, and most recently Zendesk following their acquisition of Local Measure. You're a published author, and we're starting 2026 here, celebrating the launch of your own CX consultancy, Flourish. Why don't you tell us a little bit about why we had to put an episode in the vaults, never to be seen?
Well, I've wanted to go back into running my own business. I've run a couple of businesses previously, a long time ago, back in like 2010. And since then, I've spent about 15 years really embedded into customer experience, more recently into emotional intelligence in the context of customer service. But really, I guess my blood runs with tech and, of course, AI. I had always intended to really launch Flourish. However, of course, Zendesk acquired Local Measure, who I was working with. I was running the sales arm for EMEA. And it's been a huge year. You know, what Zendesk are doing is it's genuinely groundbreaking. When the acquisition was announced, it's funny how the amount of people that reached out to me on LinkedIn that run contact centers and said, we've been waiting for this for years. And we've talked about omni-channel, single view of the customer, etc. for decades and decades. What Zendesk are doing are truly embedding natively, that's the key word, not by a third party, into the tapestry of their resolutions platform. And that will drive out greater experiences for employees, agents, of course, the customer, but it also significantly reduces the TCO. And still, we know that customer experience or customer service initiatives are kind of thwarted by the business case. If you can't prove to the CFO that you're going to show some savings over time, then you're kind of going nowhere. It becomes a hard battle. And also it makes the lives of those that work in and around customer experience in the contact center, the digital channels, easier because they can work more strategically, they can work at pace. It means the business operations get their time to value far quicker, faster outcomes, this sort of thing. So it's been a bit of a whirlwind 6 months now since the acquisition happened. But I've kind of got an itch that I can't scratch. I feel like personally, as I enter my 50th year on this planet, I want to do more. I want to do other things. My interest in emotional intelligence and the psychology of emotional intelligence, and not just for those working in the contact center, but anybody that works in the workforce, essentially, by cultivating and developing EQ, it drives better performance, higher performance. And the outcomes that unfold, which I talk about, thank you, Chris, for mentioning it, the book that launched this time last year, #1 bestseller in 5 countries, I should mention. Available on Amazon for $18.99, great Christmas stocking. These sorts of capabilities are proven to be able to drive out better business behavior and outcomes. And I also think that the more we are distracted by AI and how do we implement AI and how do we implement it, where do we implement it, where do we get started, let's not forget the fact that we need humans still, humans in the loop. And I'm also really invested in the age group of between 18, 22, 23. And these folk are known to have the lowest EQ ever recorded. And probably the kids that are younger than them now at school. So they are at sixth form, or maybe they're in their first jobs. Maybe they're working in a contact center. Maybe they're at university now and they're about to enter into their third year, final year, as my stepson is. How do we equip them with greater ability around EQ to, it's not just about empathy, it's about problem solving. You know, this age group don't know how to solve problems. They're either still texting mum and dad, or of course now they're asking ChatGPT. So problem solving, collaboration, leaning in, motivation, all of these core human things that make us human, you need to equip them for life skills and also in the workplace to be able to do their jobs in a more
And
fulfilling way.
it's fascinating from a couple of angles. One, I've got 3 19 to 22-year-olds in the house, or dotted around, I guess. So I think there's a number of factors at play there, isn't there? That's the first generation that had the end of their formal education interrupted by the pandemic,
Right.
and they're probably the first generation that come up was always online.
Yes.
You know, I didn't have internet at home until I was in my third year of university.
Yeah.
You know, so it was something that you didn't necessarily have. You know, my first mobile was around 1999, kind of, you know, it was a brick and all it did was text and you could
Yeah.
save 10 contacts and things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is a generation that only ever know an online world as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I mean, I feel it myself. You know, my nearly 21-year-old stepson, I honestly thought he was going to be age 35 in his dressing gown and still in his bedroom gaming. He's not gaming as much, which I'm kind of relieved to know. And he's flourishing, no pun intended, in his final year at uni for filmmaking. That in itself is an industry which is going to be massively impacted by AI. But in the context of customer service and customer experience, if we think that your first tier, if you like, interaction types will be automated. So I've moved, so I need to change the address on my account. I need to set up a direct debit. The basic stuff we know can be automated. Yeah, great. That leaves the hard stuff, as we know, or the more complex stuff, or the high net worth customers to actually speak to agents that, yes, they need to have the right tools. So the likes of Zendesk and other vendors out there, the right hard tools to be able to do their jobs. But then they also need to be able to have the right EQ. Now, in my humble opinion, and this is something that I talked about in my EQ and CX dissertation that I did as part of my postgrad back in 2020. And that was delivered by the infamous and lovely Sandra Thompson. But it was on the basis of Daniel Goleman, who's the kind of the godfather of emotional intelligence and his theory and his practice. But can AI on its own, in this context of a contact center, propel and develop EQ skills in an individual whose EQ is really, really low? Personally, I think the answer is that's really difficult, probably not.
Yep.
We should be using AI perhaps to screen for EQ at point of hiring. And it also means that in the context of a contact center, if we're going to give all the hard stuff to agents, does that mean we need to pay them more?
Well, they potentially need to be more skilled.
More skilled, higher IQ, higher EQ, because the job has fundamentally changed. But I do feel like we haven't given a decent rise in salary to these absolute superstar legends, superheroes, since I started talking about contact center 25 years ago. It's always been around about 20K FTE.
Well, minimum wage is now catching up with contact centers.
Yeah.
So the argument is, why would I sit on the phones and get abused all day when I can go and stack shelves or something?
Yeah. 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 And do side hustles and things like that. And the recent audits that I've done when I've gone into a contact center and spoken to agents, there's a common denominator, which is they all hate taking the voice calls. They hate it because it's such an alien thing now to speak on the phone. Not 100% of the time, there's always going to be exceptions to the rule, but generally it's not their preferred channel to be
Yes.
allocated to when they walk into the contact center to work, especially if you've got agents which are still maybe working at home, because it can be a very, very isolated job. So it's more important than ever to make sure the agents have the right tools. And that's not just, have you got the ability to do pause and resume for recording, it's the co-pilot, it's the suggestion of what to say next, when to say it. It's the form filling. And it's not just about the tech, is it? It's about, as I say, improving these sort of innate skills around collaboration, problem solving, the ability to actually listen to the customer and for the customer to feel heard.
I think as well, from being on a couple of round tables recently, you take the simple away from the agents. You're also taking the easy calls, the ones where,
Yeah.
if you have a 15-minute highly emotional call, highly complex call, and then you get a 2-minute address change, that's a lovely 2 minutes. You can do that in your sleep. But if we automate more and more away from the agent, speaking to contact centers now, it's one, we've got to look at pay. We've got to look at how we actually think about those agents, because they're not, they're handling complex queries now. They are the best agents that you have.
Yeah.
But it's also, how do we manage that from a workload, from an emotional energy level perspective? How do we
Yeah.
allow these people a chance to breathe? Because you're right, it's never a fun job being on the end of the phone when someone's unhappy.
Yeah, imagine that every single call that you have today is going to be with somebody that's either a bit pissed off or maybe something's gone wrong. And I always remember doing an audit at DWP and walking out of that contact center thinking, and this is a long time ago. This was a long time ago. It's before all these great capabilities were even around.
I think we worked at the same place at this one.
Yeah, I think it was outsourced by a BPO that I won't mention, but I remember thinking the best tech in the world can't solve the problem they've got. Yeah. Because actually in the DWP contact center and in this BPO, the agents were even younger than the average age of an agent. And a lot of these people were low in IQ because the DWP wanted to get them off the street, if you like, and into the workplace. It was in their interests. It was almost as if you've got the wrong people answering these calls, because the people that are making the phone calls, their customers, the citizens, are some of the UK's most vulnerable people.
Yeah, so you need good agents.
And then it's speaking to a 19-year-old. So we've got to really be careful about who is going to be answering these, because then if we start thinking about, if you need a higher skilled individual from an EQ and IQ perspective, so their salary goes up, do we therefore need to go back to offshore? So this is a whole other sort of conversation. Then you've got your language barriers, understanding, etc., etc. So it's a very, very, very complex and confusing time, I think.
Yeah, and when we talk about DWP, obviously they have just recently signed with Nice CX1, so we'll see 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line, whether the best tech can help to influence. Now that the technology's moved on. But you're right in that the greater the emotional need and the complexity, the better your agent needs to be, and the better equipped your agent needs to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you don't have that, they're going to walk with their feet. I posted something on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago. I think it was after Expo. It was after actually my talk at Expo, and CX Today actually wrote a very nice little summary on it. And I won't mention any names, but this one gentleman said, the contact center it will never get their hands dirty, if you like, on what a chatbot should be developed, how it should be developed, and what that flow looks like. And I said, don't underestimate these people, because we've been growing up with AI, some more than others, forever now. And let's not forget that we use it every day, sometimes completely subconsciously. So if we don't give agents, or even people that might work in the workforce optimization area of a contact center, or the QA area of the contact center, if we don't give them the right tools and the AI tools similar to what they use every day at home, then they're going to go somewhere else. Because, what turns people on today in terms of, am I happy with my job? Am I going to stay here? Am I not going to look elsewhere? It's not all driven by money anymore. It's driven by a lot of work-life balance. How do I feel when I'm at work? And I do feel that a few years ago, we started to talk about employee engagement and employee experience. And then that kind of went away a little bit. But we absolutely need to make sure that it is still underneath that spotlight. We know, of course, that there is that correlation between great EX and an EX is also AX, of course, but EX is broader. It's everybody that's involved in customer experience and, great customer service. So we know that we need to make sure that when those people start their working day, they've got the right tools to make them happy in their jobs. And that might sound a little bit fluffy, but it's absolutely true, because they'll vote with their feet, or productivity will drop.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you think about the consumer world is what drives expectations for both customers and employees. So as a customer, I converse on WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger and other things all the time. If a company doesn't offer me that, that is a concern for me. But it's like I'm using AI frequently as a consumer. So if I rocked up at a contact center, like, here's an Excel form to do quality management, I would be scratching my head wondering why I've gone back to the dark ages.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are still out there, though, those
Oh
Excel
yeah,
users.
absolutely. All the time. And to be fair to contact centers, if you're still using Excel, you're not alone, but it's definitely worth looking at whether technology and processes can assist you to do more.
Yeah. And I think that AI is becoming more cost effective, in brackets cheaper. A few years ago, not only was the AI pretty expensive, but the PS. And this is something, this is where Flourish is absolutely going to focus on, those SMB type businesses. A few years ago, like when I was working for Core AI, for instance, we'd have some really clever use cases coming from prospective customers, a lot around healthcare and GP practices for first-line triage to try and clear this huge backlog that we've got in the NHS. And I loved the use case, great, but they couldn't get the budget for the PS.
Yeah.
I think we're in a different world now. I think not only is the pence per transaction of AI coming down, and it will continue to do so, to make it more affordable and to build out a really sensible and palatable commercial model, but also PS, the cost of putting it in and the cost of running it. And we also know that while unemployment in the UK is on the rise, we know that jobs for developers, AI developers, is ×7 now. So those jobs are absolutely out there.
Yep.
So when I think of my stepson again, Tyler, impacted the industry, his chosen industry of filmmaking, massively impacted by AI, I say to him, you need to work with the tech companies that are building AI for that industry. Can't beat them, join them, attach yourself to the AI. And from a sales perspective, we're seeing the stakeholder group changing massively. We've now got the governance team in there, InfoSec team, rightly so, but they're right at the start of the discovery, if you like, because they're saying, at the moment I work across Europe, so we've got a lot of geographies that are very interested right at the start about EU safety regulations, and not just GDPR, but how is it being used and how will it be used in the future. But then, of course, we've got the developers in there that don't necessarily come from the background of customer service and customer experience like we have. And it bemuses me sometimes when I go in and go, okay, have you done some customer journey mapping? No. Okay. So let's go back to the beginning and map the journeys. But all these things, the steps that we'd normally take as a bit of a 101, the SMB market hasn't had the exposure to be able to do that because they've never had the budget until now.
It's never been attainable.
Yeah. So it's kind of a really nice, exciting time for them. And just to shift gears into sort of more of a commercial thread, we're now seeing a lot of customers that, of course, say, I don't want to sign up for a year, never mind 2 or 3 years, for my 500 agents, 1,000 agents, bums on seats. No, thank you very much. Because if I've got a really successful voice bot, chat bot, doesn't actually need to be a bot, does it? It can just be a workforce automation piece. Then in a year's time, I'm not going to have 500 human agents. A third of those might be repurposed to do a different type of job within the contact center.
Yep.
So having the flexibility from a commercial model. So having a pool of licenses, you've got 500 licenses, you might want to use them for human agents today, but as they drop down and ramp up for automation, you need a commercial model that will ebb and flow with that, but also in alignment with resolutions. So if I was the CFO, I will pay you when you've resolved my case. So that's going to be really, really hard, I think, to structure and to map and to measure. What is an outcome? When is it actually case closed?
It's certainly an interesting time, and I think we're going to see maybe that move away from a per agent model to an overall total cost of ownership, which is both agent and consumption based, and hopefully outcome based.
Yeah.
Certainly, one of my employers 10 years ago was doing something similar, but on a containment basis within IVRs.
Yeah.
So it's been there for a while. It's just, if you think about pay structures within the CX technology industry and the SaaS industry, it's always been license costs. So we've got that whole challenge around how do we do that differently and still compensate people and motivate people.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where I guess the likes of Zendesk that have one platform where you could truly measure the journey because it sits in one place. So you've got your data all in one place and your quality analytics. So I do believe that Zendesk has something very unique at the moment, but of course, the pace of change is so rapid. You know what? Even I talk about in the book, I sometimes go, is that even current anymore? And we're only kind of 12 months on. It's quite startling. And being able to sort of stay ahead of the curve, is becoming harder and harder.
Yeah. But also fascinating and a lovely challenge. I think what we're going to do, Kathryn, is just take a slight pause there and we'll come back and we'll ask you about one of your favorite customer experiences.
Thank you very much.
Your call is important to us. Please hold and you'll be connected to your next favorite customer experience shortly.
Welcome back to my favorite customer experience. I'm here this week with Kathryn Simons-Porter. And Kathryn, why don't you share with us a recent customer experience?
I have got two, if we have time.
Of course.
I'm going to start with the most recent. Customer experience, it's so personal, it's so emotive. It kind of makes me smile when we talk about organizations that go, we give great customer experience. Well, what's good at customer experience for me could be completely different to how you feel. And it could change. A brand might make you very happy with one journey today, but last week it was a different story. So something that's going on right now at home is that on Sunday we had a burst pipe. And it's everybody's kind of worst nightmare. Part of our house dates back to 1890, so it's pretty old. And we've got these beautiful, original, traditional, ornate ceilings. And I don't really know what the right word is, but is it the coving and the ceiling rows, etc.?
Yep.
Looks nice. Don't know the professional name for it. Water was dripping in. My husband was flapping. Rightly so. And we managed to, can I mention the name of the insurance company?
Yeah, of course.
So we called eSure. We have 24/7 emergency cover. They sent somebody out. His name was Jake. And he managed, lifted up the floorboards, didn't have to go in through the ceiling, which is great. So floorboards were lifted up, managed to find the leaking pipe. Now, he wasn't able to resolve it there and then because he didn't have the right tools. So it would be outstanding if, of course, he could have done an FCR check, one and done. But he couldn't. It is what it is. So what he did do was go, let's find a short-term fix until we come back out tomorrow, which is today, hopefully this afternoon, so I can put the heating on. That's why I'm wearing a thick jumper. To catch the water. He talked us through what was going to happen next. He probably walked my husband through what was going to happen next at least 3 times because the husband was still flapping. He showed empathy. He listened. He read that we were kind of a bit all over the place, and he adjusted to that. And he was only young. He was probably about 25, something like that. Now, really, he could have gone, well, I've done my bit. You need to call the contact centre. So this is now buildings insurance, and you need to log another case and get them to come out. He could have done that. And if you think really, if that was a rudimental chatbot experience, that's exactly what a chatbot would have done, because the chatbot wouldn't have been able to read us as a human being.
Yep.
Okay. So that was really good customer experience that I wasn't necessarily experiencing. I wasn't expecting. I actually do think you get a lot of that with tradespeople that come out on behalf of larger organizations. And I don't know whether it's because they see so many people, they just have a higher EQ because they can read people better because they meet so many different people in their home environments and can completely be empathic towards the fact that it's mid-November or start of December, in fact, and it's freezing cold and the heating's off. The second example actually goes back to where we first spoke 12 months ago. My dad's 83. He was 82 this time last year. Wanted to buy a new chair. He's finding it more and more difficult to get out of his old chair. Went along to an independent provider, and they welcomed him in, gave him a cup of coffee, included biscuits, free biscuits. That's not bad. Sat him down. And my dad is a chatter. He always comes out with stories. He lives on his own. And again, these people can understand where dad's coming from, empathize to the fact that he's on his own, and perhaps he just wants to chat and a cup of coffee and a biscuit. And yeah, that did get them the sale, but they didn't have to do it. It's going over and above, isn't it? It's going over and above. So those are my two examples. And, we talk about a customer experience being how you made me feel in the moment. But I got the warm and fuzzies just from dad's experience because I'm so protective of dad. Make dad happy. or sad or cross, then I feel it too. So when we talk about customer advocacy and turning customers into fans, then how do you do that? It is absolutely by applying the warm and fuzzies, and that will ricochet out to their friends and their family.
I don't think we've had anyone actually just refer to it as a warm and fuzzies, but I think the fact that you spoke about that experience that you had with your dad sourcing a chair on the original episode we recorded a year ago, and you're still talking about it a year later, tells you just how good a customer experience that was.
Yeah, it was a great example of customer experience, but I think it also underlines the fact that you need to incorporate the emotional side into customer service. And who knows what it's going to be like in 5-10 years' time. If automation is going to go towards doing 80%, 90% of the everyday interactions that come in across customer service, whatever that might look like, whatever sector it is, whatever use case, I think that's actually quite sad in a way. That will it start to make consumers numb? Because it just becomes the expected. Just do the bar minimum, one and done, and that's it. But certainly I think in my lifetime and in Dad's lifetime, that human intervention and the warm and fuzzies are still really, really important.
I think from speaking to people across the last year, that's the key now, is the human experience. So no matter how much gets automated, the human experience is the one that matters. So the amount of times people talk about restaurants or hotels or in-person experiences or retail on this podcast is testament to, I think there's been 1 or 2 stories about a contact center, and that's not to disparage contact centers. We've spent 40 odd minutes talking about the positives, but it's those human experiences,
Yeah.
those moments matter, and they matter more and more now.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I hope that's not going to go away.
Well, I think that's a lovely point to finish on. So, Kathryn, where can people find more information about yourself and about Flourish?
I thought you'd never ask. So it is www.flourish-ai.co.uk, or you can find me on LinkedIn.
So we'll pop those links into the show notes, and there'll be QR codes up on the visual feed now as well that you can scan to connect. Kathryn, thank you very much for joining me on My Favorite Customer Experience.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, Chris.
Thanks for tuning in, folks, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks' time to talk about another favorite customer experience.
Thank you for listening to My Favorite CX. Your listenership is important to us. On your keypad, please press a number between 1 and 5 to rank how much you've enjoyed your experience.